Hyper-focused on Fleetwood Mac, my roommate's dead, fungus fermentation, another Wonka reboot, JFK's assassination.
It's not my favorite topic, just my brain's current fixation.
Hyper-focus.
Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast. I am your host, Virginia Dickens, and I am here with writer and comedian Nat Silverman.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hi, thank you for being here. I super appreciate it. Before we get into your Hyperfocus in a little bit, which is about the show Supernatural and fandom and how it ties into the 2020 election.
I swear it'll all make sense once I get going.
I'm thrilled to dive into. And then later we're going to talk about my Hyperfocus, which is about the film Rust that had the fatal shooting on set with Alec Baldwin, and we will get into more of that later also. But first, I'd like to start off the podcast just having you share your experience being neurodivergent.
Well, I'm depressed. Yeah, I've been dealing with depression and anxiety to like different degrees since I was a kid. In my mind, I think of my first depressive episode happening when I was 10. I've been in therapy about it, in and out since then. I've been medicated for it on and off since then. It's definitely been a thing that's like impacted my life for such a long time that can be a little bit hard for me to tell like where the borders of it are, you know? Like, I've had for the most part, positive experiences with SSRIs. But I think for me, you sometimes run into, like, the coupling of that of, like, sometimes being depressed is, like, a reasonable response to the situation you're in. Like, I've had a tough year so far. But, like, it's based in stuff that has to do with reality. So,
Yes.
like, I'm depressed, but it's not necessarily a thing I can medicate my way out of because the problems are with larger geopolitical forces.
Yes, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
And feel the same way.
I'm having my insurance companies are terrible. I had a very funny conversation I went to the doctor, and he was talking about how much he hates insurance companies, like, for a long time, and, like, how bad the CEOs were. And I was like, well, maybe more of them will get shot. And he was, like, laughing really hard.
That's
and
so
I was
funny.
Like, I can't believe how mainstream of a take this is now.
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's, change takes time and stuff. But it does feel like that happened and something shifted.
Yeah.
Also, someone was trying to tell me that Luigi Mangione is, like, really tall. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's a short king.
I mean, just of the Italian guys I know, that feels right. But also
Tall or short?
Short.
Right.
Feels right.
Yeah.
But he might just be hot.
I think he's
the
definitely
two are
hot, but I feel like the
conflated.
news makes him feel that big.
Well, you could go see him. He's doing court dates like in New York.
That's true. He also will like write you a letter back if you. I didn't write him personally.
One of the first statements his attorneys put out was like, he thanks you so much for all of the letters and photographs and stuff that you're sending him. But as a reminder, like, since he's in penitentiary, like, they're all searched and looked at by cops before they get to him, which is just like a very polite way of being like, stop sending nudes.
Yeah,
like,
stop sending nudes. Don't send your underwear. Good for him. Are you ready to get into
totally
your hyperfocus?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is, I picked a historical hyperfocus I had. At the moment, I'm between hyperfocuses, which is sad for me.
No, I get the feeling, yeah.
I feel like sometimes you get the kind of depressed where your brain is like, I gotta latch onto a thing that gives me serotonin, and sometimes you get the kind of depressed that's just like, nothing's hitting. So I'm I figured I'd look back on something that was very...
That helped at one point.
Yeah, that was a very specific and crazy hyperfocus.
So it's supernatural.
Yes. Last time I was on your show, which was great, I sort of talked about how like my hyperfocuses tend to be stories that either are queer or like I've decided they're queer. And hilariously, Supernatural kind of did both. Because like it ran for 15 years and like wildly improbable, probably. Over that 15 years, they managed to kind of create one of the most iconic queer characters of all time, despite like nothing about the show seeming like it would set that up. Are you familiar with Supernatural like at all?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
Was it
that's
on the
totally
CW?
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
I was watching like America's Next Top Model.
Not as different as you would think. A
Really?
lot of posing, a lot of like cheekbone action.
Okay.
Yeah, basically it was pitched in like the immediate post X-Files, post Buffy era as like a show like that. These two guys travel around investigate mysteries, supernatural themed mysteries, obviously. The main difference explicitly, like when you look back at the way they initially marketed and advertised the show and talked about it, was they were like, this is a man show for men. Scully on the X-Files, Buffy on Buffy, those women making it too fruity in here.
Women are out.
Yeah, we're done with women. We want men to have a show. Like they talk all the time about like not having chick flick moments. This is just a masculine show.
Right. Okay. Which sounds kind of gay already.
Right. Like inevitably when you are trying to perform masculinity that hard, it starts being, people are like, hey, wait, you're performing that, you know?
Yeah.
In a like elevator pitch description of the show, there's two brothers, Sam and Dean, who travel around fighting monsters, particularly demons. Sam's thing is that he's tall and he's like the nice, sensitive one, but secretly he's got a bad boy side. And Dean's thing is that he's like a rough and tumble womanizer type, but secretly he has a sad boy side.
Oh, so they're like yin and yang.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're brothers. They have feelings. It's truly, it's so... This is going to be a thing I talk about a lot. But the fact that the people writing this were like, yeah, this is going to be the most masked show ever. And we're so blindsided by the enormous wave of female and queer fans that really embrace the show. It truly, they should have seen it coming. But it was 2005. It was literally 2005. The show ran for 15 years.
Okay, so it just ended. Well,
It
it ended in 2020. Okay,
Yeah,
well, we're going to get to that.
Well, it's a long road. So, almost immediately from when it launches, it's pretty popular. There is a sizable dude fandom. There's this crazy stat, like it's the #1 most requested and ordered show by like people who are on military bases, but it also immediately develops a sizable like female and queer audience, a traditional internet fandom of that sort, who are interested in like shipping at the time, because the only two characters basically were these brothers. Like, just...
Oh my God, when you said shipping, I thought like shipping like FedEx.
Oh no, that's totally reasonable. No, this is the
I
other.
was like, oh, okay, they work at like the post office.
The other stupider
Like
meaning
at
of...
sea.
It comes from relationship.
Okay.
So it's like relationshipping these two characters.
Oh, duh. Wow. Okay, I have heard that term before.
No,
oh my
this
God.
is good
Okay,
context.
but they
'cause-
don't work in shipping.
No,
They
nobody's with FedEx.
They're not on boats.
But anyway, so people got really, a core fandom starts forming focused on shipping of like female fans. The people creating the show do not like this. Some fandoms, I feel like, have really productive and positive relationships with like the production team around the show, and some fandoms are like versus the show, and almost immediately Supernatural and the producers of Supernatural were like versus each other.
Fun.
This particularly comes to a head in season 3. The writers' strike happens, the 2008 writers' strike. It forces them to change up the ending to the 3rd season in order to write their way out of the 3rd season. At the 4th season premiere, they introduce a new character. His name's Castiel, and he immediately is like a hit with the kids.
Yeah, that's a hot name.
He,
Castiel. Ooh.
There's a lot of demons in the show. The first 3 seasons are largely about like fighting demons. There's no mention of God or angels at all until season 4, when Castiel shows up. He's the first angel. He rescues Dean from hell and like brings him back to Earth and like fixes him and stuff. Like as a character, he was supposed to like introduce the concept of angels. Some sources say like he was supposed to die or be written off after like a 3-episode order, and then it was like maybe after like the midpoint of the season. But either way, like this is back when people were writing and producing a show as it was airing, and like the second that Castiel shows up, the ladies on the internet are like, we fucking love this dude. Because like he has immediate, really intense like tension with Dean, and he's like a hot white dude. That's like, back in the day, that's all you needed.
That's all you needed.
He is a character that reads as neurodivergent. Like a lot of people, even before like neurodivergency was really in the discourse, I think looked at him and was like, that guy's weird the way I'm weird. And queer people are like, that shit's gay. And also like women who are straight and like shipping are like, that shit's gay. I don't want to act like it's entirely the queer community behind it.
There's like everyone seemed to know except maybe like the producers.
Right,
who
except
were, like...
for the manly men who are again like, this is the man show for men.
Yeah.
This is really when that, I'm going to say female as like a shorthand, like that female side of the fandom explodes. This is when like the show gets really big. This is when I start like paying attention, because it's like a huge deal. And then as the season goes on, like I said, he was supposed to die at a certain point. They don't kill him. He was supposed to die at another point. They don't kill him. And then by the end of the season, his arc has become one of like, he's like an angel. He was created to do a job. And he instead decides that he's going to like give all that up, defy heaven itself in order to like team up with Dean Winchester and like be on his side.
Dean is evil.
Well, not technically. The show does not want you to think that Dean is evil, but you could certainly argue that he is because like masculinity.
Right, yes.
And like the choices he's making. There's so much torture on this show. It's like such a 24 era TV show. But that's an interesting thing about it that like I'll talk more about. But just because it ran for so long, like all this shit that they do in the early seasons, by like 2018, it's like, oh man, that stuff looks kind of bad for us. This becomes important when it's like, as soon as Kaz is introduced and like they understand the way the fandom sees him, they start doing a ton of gay jokes about him. And then in 2018, they kind of have to be like, oh shit, like stuff that we meant as jokes, now we look really homophobic unless they're kind of true. So
Got it.
But it's just like most shows don't run for 15 years. Most shows don't like predate gay marriage as like a concept and then like still exist in a post-gay marriage world. So in season 4, they start doing the sort of shit that you do towards the end of the show where you get all meta. So like in season 4, they introduce this character, Chuck, who is the writer of a series of books called Supernatural. It's mostly a joke and a way for the writers to like have a character who's like literally a manifestation of them. And then in the next season, they're like, oh yeah, there's fans of the book series Supernatural in the Supernatural universe. And there's an episode where the two main characters like go to one of these fan conventions about themselves, and it also gets really meta in terms of talking about the fandom. So when I say like this is a fandom where the creators are very much versus the fans, like you can see it in terms of the way they present the fans. When you see a woman fan of Supernatural, they're like crazy and like cringe and like doing weird shit and very embarrassing. And like it is kind of funny, but it's such an open disdain, and it's like they had a vision in their mind of what the show like would be appreciated as, and as soon as they noticed that people weren't doing that, they were like, oh shit, we gotta like make fun of this. It's relatively recent, I feel like, that the idea of people talking about like queerness in a show has been met with anything other than like hostility.
No, and now like we even in that time frame, like you said, like 2008 jump up to like 2018, a lot has changed culturally.
Anyway, around season 7 or 8 or so, I stopped paying attention. I'm tired of getting jerked around. Supernatural was really a pioneer of like queer baiting. So like there's a lot of scenes with like the characters like talking about their profound bond and like having a lot of eye contact, and other characters will joke about them being in love, or they'll make a lot of gay jokes about Castiel, and then they are like, yeah, but like you all know what we're doing. This is crumbs for you. This makes the fandom be crazy. So much of like classic queer fandom is just sort of like watching stuff and like looking for like clues. I think like if the kind of people who got into QAnon pivoted into doing fandom stuff, they might be happier. I think it's the same urge that people have to like uncover a mystery, but the stakes are much
lower.
Like
as Taylor Swift fans that look for Easter eggs.
Yes. Yeah, the Gaylors.
Yeah.
So I absolutely stopped paying attention to Supernatural at a certain point. Mainly the thing that you hear is that they're killing off a lot of characters. It was a show that never had an ensemble cast, which is so silly. Like every queer character, every female character that like the audience sort of likes inevitably dies, except Castiel, who is immortal. They seriously try to kill this dude so many times. In the most seriously was like at the start of season 7, they straight up are like, he's dead for real, he's out of the show, and ratings like tank. So at the end of the season, they're like, fuck, we gotta bring this dude back.
JK.
He's just too powerful. Skip ahead to 2020.
Yes.
I've not really been paying attention to Supernatural.
What part of 2020?
It is November 2020.
Okay.
And then the election.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember.
I am familiar.
It went for so many days.
Yes.
Because like Tuesday was election day, and then they were like, well, it's all absentee ballots. So in the middle of that fucking election week, I start hearing about Supernatural again for the first time in like almost a decade. People are freaking out and losing their minds because it turns out in the intervening like 8 years, some amount of the production team is like, you know what? Fuck. We're just going to do it. The third to last episode, this is, once again, I'm going to have to talk about the plot of Supernatural.
That's
I apologize.
fine.
In the previous season, they'd set up a situation where Cass has to make a deal with a bad guy who basically is like, I'm not going to kill you now, but when you experience a moment of pure and perfect happiness, like for the first time in your life, that's when I'll show up and take you to hell.
Damn.
Yeah, right? It's mean.
Yeah, that's me. That's really me.
So the fandom, I didn't know this at the time, we're like, what the fuck is Cassiel's moment of happiness going to be if it's not something gay?
Yeah.
So in the third to last episode, he and Dean get in a situation where they're about to die, a bad guy is coming to kill them, and the only thing that can defeat this bad guy is the bad guy that Cass made the deal with. So he turns to Dean and gives this really big dramatic speech where he's like, for a long time I thought that happiness would mean having something, but sometimes happiness just means knowing something. The thing that makes me happy is loving you, and I love you. And then he is immediately killed by that bad guy, and they all go to, not Dean, they all go to super hell.
Oh my God.
It truly, I was so vindicated, and I was also wow, they're still homophobic.
Yeah.
It was years and years and years of
Build up and
build up,
yeah.
and of the show being you're not seeing what you think you're seeing. You're crazy. These guys are all super straight, and if you see anything other than that, you're nuts. And then they were fine, fucking, you know what? You were right. You were right. This guy's gay as hell. He's gonna get a romantic love confession for the ages, and then because we are supernatural, he's going to die.
That's crazy. I'm already now feel conflicted about it just hearing it for the first time ever. I'm what the fuck? That's fucked up. So how does this does this tie into the election actually?
Well,
it coincides.
It coincides. I
Yeah.
think the emotional tenor of the response would have been crazy no matter what. The fact that it happened during the single most stressful week of anyone's life
Yes.
really turned up that dial.
Yes.
The other thing is that it's there's still 2 episodes left of the season. No one has been watching Supernatural for all this time. All of a sudden, people are coming back to Supernatural. I guess I gotta watch this fucking finale and see how they resolve this dramatic love confession. Because Dean doesn't say anything in response. He just falls to the floor and starts crying and stuff. So in the next 2 episodes,
That sounds pretty gay to me.
I know, crying is gay.
Crying is gay.
You can't do it if you're straight. The next 2 episodes, Cass is mentioned twice, and then Dean dies. He never appears again. They throw in a line that's Cass is alive again, don't worry about it. But he straight up does not appear. It's the most supernatural bullshit there's ever been. If you think about 2005, there were queer characters on TV, that's sort of the Glee era. But they were almost always immediately marked as gay. Mm-hmm. So that if you were someone who was uncomfortable with that, you sort of were able to go from the beginning well, that's just a character that's not for me. Where it's only relatively recently that there's more characters where it's you find out that they're queer over the course of seasons or over the run of a show. And I think it just is a slightly more or seen as a dangerous thing for an audience, because what if a straight guy really relates to a character and then that character comes out? They might get mad. It might hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
That's sort of the end of the story, except that a few weeks after that episode aired with the love confession, the Spanish language dub came out.
Oh.
And in the Spanish language dub, whoever was putting that vocal performance together, when Cass says, I love you to Dean, Dean says, I love you too. Yeah.
Oh, I like that better.
I know. It's reciprocated. It's
Yeah.
canonical, but only in Spanish. The conspiracy theories I've heard.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Oh, potential segue.
Yeah.
Jensen Ackles of Supernatural was supposed to be in Rust, but he the part got recast. I don't know the story.
Well, that's lucky, I feel
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. So, okay. I was obviously familiar with Rust when it hit the news. So, Rust is the film that was produced by Alec Baldwin, who's also starring in it, where there was an accidental shooting with a live round on set. It's a Western film, and he shot 2 people, the director of photography and then the director. The director of photography, Helena Hutchins, passed away. And so I remember when that hit the news, you hear it, you're something obviously went wrong. People on social media, everyone talks, whatever. And then life goes on and the news story passed. And then so I started watching The Baldwins on HBO Max.
Oh, yeah. That seems like a wild reality show.
It is. For some reason, I'm in the Hilaria Baldwin subreddit. I don't need to be in it. I don't know why I joined it.
There's so many subreddits.
Everyone in that subreddit just like absolutely hates her gut to the point where it's like, you know, like at first you're like, this is fair criticism, and then it's like, I think you just want to like really dunk on a woman kind of a thing, because she gets picked apart for literally everything. She is also like,
she does seem kind of wacky.
she's wacky. I'm not going to get into Hilaria here, but the show's kind of winning me over, but it is very obviously a big kind of PR stunt. It's just a reality show essentially of Alec and Hilaria and their 7 kids. Ooh. And they start off the whole series talking about Rust. And they address it head on. And they are very straightforward with like, this is extremely tragic that Helena lost her life and, you know, a son lost his mother. And they don't try to pretend it didn't happen. They address it straightforward, which I found very interesting. Just like as a tactic, I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of what you have to do. Although it is also, it's like, we didn't feel bad enough about it to not like make a TV show capitalizing on the added attention that we're getting.
Right. Yes. Which also I think is like twofold of like Alec Baldwin like doesn't have the same industry pool that he did since then too. So I'm like either it's that or they just need money.
7 kids.
Like actually 7 kids.
Do they want those kids going to like a good college?
Well, they have a 5-bedroom apartment in Manhattan.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Like they're cramped and they're rich, but I'm like, you guys need more space. And like, I'm like, well, now he can't afford more space because, you know, he killed somebody. Anyway, so, and also the Baldwins, like the first couple of episodes overlap with Alec's trial of it. And then separately, someone had tweeted maybe a review or something about a documentary on Hulu about the film set. And so I watched that. And so that kind of gave me a bigger like scope of what happened. And like generally speaking, I feel like it was like a microcosm of all of the problems across not even just the entertainment industry, but kind of like all industries.
Yeah.
In terms of like the safety of your employees and payments and all these safeguard things that we've had in place that have been like slowly and gradually stripped away over the years. So how it starts is Alec Baldwin wants to work with the director, Joel Souza. The budget was like $6 or $7 million. It's like not a huge budget. And they're filming the Western. And like what happened was a few things. I guess I'll start with the armor that they had on set. And like she was so young, like 23 years old, but they show her in the police footage and I'm like, is that a 17-year-old girl? Yeah. Early on, the other actors were like, she feels like unprofessional with the guns. One actor's like, I didn't say something because I didn't want to be like difficult.
The thing that I heard was that like part of the issue there is that they chose to use like non-union people.
I was trying to read in on that because I was like, I thought for sure this was like non-union everything, but the film crew was, I believe, union.
Okay.
But the day before the shooting happened, most of the film crew walked out over safety concerns.
Well, shit, they were right on the money with that one.
Yes. Safety concerns pertaining to COVID and also because this was like, I think 2021, and there had been 2 misfires of the arms. And they wrote their concerns, and typically you're in a union and people, you know, it's like, these are your concerns. We will address your concerns. We'll make sure they're good. And then we can go back to work, and their concerns weren't addressed and they left.
Yeah.
Which plays into how Helena, who was the director of photography, and she was devastated. I think it was also a little blindsided that the crew left. This was like a big passion of hers too. And like, she wanted to stay. From what I read was that who they tried to hire back were non-union or something like that. And then with the armor, I guess 2 armors had like dropped out last minute. So they reached out to this girl, and her name is Hannah Gutierrez Reed. And this was her second film being like the main armor. But it's also a Western. There's guns everywhere.
Yeah, seriously.
And people were like, she feels a little unprofessional. Her dad is
oh no, Nepo baby.
Yeah, no, but her dad is like a gun guy, Fel Reed, who is like a stuntsman, armor, and like I guess apparently any of those movies where like the guys like spin the gun on their finger, he taught everyone how to do that.
Wow.
So that's her dad. There's also the first assistant director, the first AD, David Halls, who's supposed to kind of be #1 charge of safety, who also was not thorough in being safe. And so what happened was they were shooting a scene with Alec, and Helena's monitor wasn't working. So she was standing in front of him to show the shot that she wanted to the crew, and the director was behind her watching. This is where it gets a little dicey on like when they prosecuted Alec Baldwin, his charges were because like you never point a gun at anybody ever. I also was heard he was directed to point the gun at the camera, and that's what the first AD said, was like, no, you never point a gun at a person, even if it's like a prop gun, a clean gun, whatever, unless the director of photography tells you to. It gets
And,
a little
like, in the process of getting a gun like into its mark, presumably it could pass by.
Yes.
People.
And I think he was just like, this is how I'm going to do like this shot. Hannah, the armor, filled the gun with what she thought were blanks, showed it to the first AD, and he said, okay, good. And we got like a cool gun. And then that's what happened. No, it's crazy. And they even had like, because they filmed this in New Mexico, and they had like not the Department of Labor, something like that, investigating just like the working conditions on set. Well, this is the part that like is clearly this armor was not equipped to like do her job. But at the same time, there were emails from a different line producer. Her name's Gabrielle Pickle.
Sorry, that's just a wacky name for a very serious story.
I know. And so I guess Hannah was hired as the armor, and then also as like a props assistant.
Oh, okay.
And essentially
got
got
like two different jobs.
And like the armor paid more, but even still like probably didn't pay, like they skimped out like her rates. She was cheap, for a Western. Like,
so was Alec Baldwin also like an EP on this project? Like, was he responsible for some of these choices?
he is one of the producers. There's a lot of producers.
Sure.
So that's where I'm not quite sure. I'm like, who's in charge of the hiring? Who's in charge of this or that?
He might have just been a money person rather than a hiring person.
Right.
But like,
and
I
he's
don't know.
like in the movie too. And this line producer literally emailed Hannah being like, I need you to spend less time on the guns and do your duties for props.
Oof.
But also you left a gun unattended here. But also there were supposed to be more training sessions with Alec that they canceled and didn't have. So it's kind of like incompetence on like multiple levels.
For sure.
So they do the trial. The first AD, he pleads guilty and has like 6 months probation. And then they put Hannah on trial. The jury found her guilty and she got 18 months. It's tough too because it is all essentially an accident. There's
Right.
no deliberate anything. But
yeah, but it's negligence.
it is
you know?
negligence,
It's
exactly.
Like, it's kind of like vehicular manslaughter. I don't know.
This kind of the scariest part to me because they kept being like, there's no reason whatsoever a live bullet should be on set
Yeah,
under any circumstances.
that's how I feel.
How did that get here? And then they investigated further and found that there were a total of 6
God.
live rounds on the whole set. And so you have like the other actors being like interviewed in this documentary, just kind of being like, we've been shooting these guns for weeks. Like I could have been the one to shoot someone else could have been the person to get shot, is like horrifying to think about. So truly, I think it just happened to be Alec Baldwin that pulled one of those 6 live rounds. And like you're also supposed to test all the blanks before you put them into the guns, and like that wasn't happening. Just like safety on like every level. So that's where I'm like a little bit, not like Alec Baldwin redemption, but of all of the levels of negligence, I don't think he's the main culprit of that.
Yeah. I feel like maybe he's negligent as a producer, but like as an
Yes.
actor, he's not necessarily at fault.
Yeah. And that's what they were trying to get him on, was like, you shouldn't point a gun at somebody, even if it's a prop. And then they ended up, there was, I guess, like evidence withheld or something. Also, he has like the best lawyer of everyone.
Oh my God. He has so much lawyer.
So there was like, evidence was withheld and the case got dismissed. This documentary, though, was like, I thought it was really tastefully done, but also to honor Helena. So she's not just like the woman Alec Baldwin killed.
yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a good point.
show her work, show who she was as like, an artist. And they went forward and finished the movie.
Right.
And they got like a blessing from her family. I think kind of with like the mentality of like, this is her last piece of work and we want to showcase it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways you can look at it.
Right.
I mean, they can't find any distributors
Oh my
here.
God, right?
Also, it was all the actors like came back to finish it too.
Wow.
But I think they all kind of felt like bonded maybe by
And also maybe
it,
they
and
had contracts.
They might have, yeah, that's also, I was like, oh, this is so sweet. They probably are like, I have to.
I don't know. I'm being cynical.
No, they definitely could. But it did give me like a different mindset on, because like even in the Baldwins, like, and I know it's TV and I know it's a PR move, but like this does feel like a wake up call for him in some way. And they kept saying how like he just wished like he was the one to die instead of like extreme guilt, and which is like also a great opportunity for like a reality show. I understand. I think both things can be like true. It's just making me rethink some things, especially once I was like, oh shit, 6 bullets were just bouncing around this set and anyone could have been the one to pull that trigger.
Like, I've never been on a proper film set like that. I just don't understand under what circumstances you would ever want live rounds. Like blanks, sure.
That's
like,
what I forgot to add. They were brought on set somehow by Hannah.
Oh, okay.
She had a box that she said, I brought that box from my last film I worked on. And I guess the live rounds were in that box. So that's how it got on set, was from her.
Man.
Yeah. If you're going to like hold people accountable, and I'm like, yes, she's inexperienced, overworked, underpaid. They should not have hired her.
No, don't hire a 23-year-old. Not
they
to be
should-
ageist,
They
but
should
come
not
on.
have hired her to begin with, but also it is her job
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
I feel like someone a little more mature and like not 23 might have felt comfortable being like, this is not safe.
Well, that's it,
I
too.
need to like,
Yeah.
you know, you need to hire someone else to help me,
Like
or
how the
I
film
need to do a
crew-
different job,
yeah.
you know, something like that.
That just comes with experience.
Right.
Of, I can't do my job properly, so I'm not going to do it because
Yeah.
it's unsafe. This is a broader conversation about safety and like workers' rights and all that shit in general. And it just happened. It was like a perfect storm, I feel like, on this movie set.
Yeah.
Pro workers' rights. This is a pro workers' rights podcast. Always has been. That's about our time.
Oh my gosh.
So
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you so much for coming. Nat Silverman is a comedian in New York City, and you can see her work with Off Cue Comedy. Go ahead and follow them on TikTok and Instagram. They are really good and funny. We'll link those in the show notes. And you can also see her perform with veteran sketch comedy team Milwaukee at the Magnet Theater in New York City. And if you would like to follow this show at Hyperfocus Comedy for updates on live shows and episodes, that would be cool. There's also a Patreon if you'd like to support the show. And I'm Virginia Dickens, and this has been Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.